So now it's time to talk about preparing the file for print. So one thing we like to keep in mind for print is when you're printing something front to back, there's sometimes a little bit of wiggle room in the printer, and it can throw off the edges a little bit. So for instance, if you had a solid colored page, you wouldn't want, if the other side was a little bit off, to have, when that gets cut, to see a strip of white along the edges if that's not part of your design. So the simplest bleed is with a solid color because then you just stretch the color to the edge, and if it gets cut off, then we don't worry about it. When we have design elements like this that go to the edge, it can be a little bit trickier. But first thing I would do is to go ahead and see if I make this the full size of the bleed area and then look at the crop area, if it makes a big difference to my design. So I know that to create a bleed of 0.125, which is the professional standard amount that you want to allow. In a lot of cases, I would do an even larger bleed than that, just to be on the safe side. And I happen to know that enlarging this by 102.777 will, and then if this is linked, I'm just going to hit tab, so it's going to put both of those in there. And that's with the black arrow, and I did that. And then I can fit that to the bleed area. Actually, the way the page percentages work, so it fit the bleed area on the top, but made it a little bit bigger on the sides. And then I'm going to zoom in, and I can hold down the space bar to get the hand and kind of look at my edges. And of course, if you had typography, you don't want it to get too close to the cut line. So this line here, the outside line, is the bleed. That's the part that's going to get cut off. This side here is actually the cut line. That's the edge of your design that you made. And what we're saying is that when it gets cut, it could go a little bit in or a little bit out. So the 0.125 might even be a little bit of overkill. So if it really looks like your type is too close to the edge or some important part of your image, you can sort of negotiate between the two sides, or a little bit up and down. Or I could bring down this size a little bit. So it always resets it to 100%. So I'm going to go ahead and try 99 and then move that around. So we just want to be sure to have some overlap over the edges, but then still keep the integrity of the design. If you have a design that does have solid colors, or that would be pretty easy to fix in Photoshop, you can also opt to do that. So let's take a page here, for example. Okay, so I'm going to enlarge this by 102.777. Okay, and then one little trick, if you want to just get this this centered on the spread, I'm going to use the black arrow and I'm going to click on the box, and then I'm going to do Edit, Cut. And then I'm going to make sure that I do Command 0 or Fit Page to Window. Oops, sorry. Fit Spread in Window. That centers it in the document, so that now if I do a straight paste from that cut, it puts it right in the center. So the document's in the center, and now the picture's in the center. So it gives me an even amount around the edges. But now I want to make my bleed adjustment in Photoshop. So now I'm going to use the white arrow, click off, click on, and I'm going to reset this back to 100. And then I'm going to go to Object Fitting, Center Content. So you'll see that we are pretty much back where we started, but our picture box is a little bit bigger. So our image still fits to the regular edge, but we have a picture box a little bit larger, so if we want to enlarge our image in Photoshop around the edges, we can, and then it will update in InDesign. Let me take you through it. I know that's a little complicated. So I'm going to select this image, go to my links palette, go to the drop down. Now if you embedded your links, you'll have to unembed them at this point. Then I'm going to go to Edit with Photoshop. Oops. Okay. Now I'm going to do image canvas size. And I'll just add a 0.125 on there on both of those. That would be my preferred extension. And it's going to add a white area around the edge. So now I'm going to zoom in and see if there's if I can possibly patch what's around the edge. This is only if it doesn't work to enlarge your image to fit the bleed. So there's little things that I can do around some of the edges, like I can do a rectangle selection for just the gray area. I wouldn't want to do this with the type, but if I select just the gray area there, I can do Edit, Free Transform, and then I can just pull that up a little bit and double click it. And if you still are working in your layered file, there might be other things that you can do that are even easier. So Free Transform is Command T. So I just pull that up a little bit. Again, I would never do that to an image of someone's face or something, but to things that are fairly abstract, just a little bit of distortion is not going to show up because most likely this is going to get cropped. So again, I'm typing in Command T after I make the selection. So this way I was able to keep my type where I had originally designed it, but just fix a little bit of my edge. Now, if you had an image with, let's say, sky and grass, that, of course, touches more than just little areas around the edge, but if it wasn't too important at the bottom, you could also take a small selection of an area that doesn't, like, so if there were people here, you wouldn't want to stretch them, but if there were grass down here, you could take a small area and you could just pull the whole thing down a tiny bit. You can, what is that doing there? You can also, of course, use your airbrush and clone tool. And then I'm going to go ahead and save that. Apply, and go back to InDesign and look at my links palette and see if it's automatically updated. I did. Now I just want to make sure that, so it shrunk it down. So I want to make sure that it stays at 100%. So I'm typing in 100%, and then I'm going to need to recenter it. Fitting center. Okay, so now my type is in exactly the same place, but my edges, oops, what am I moving here? Oh dear. Okay, well, let's just pretend. Somebody hit some kind of a button there. So in that case, the type stayed where it was, the edges expanded a little bit to help with that cutoff.